Welcome to the panel discussion of Unlabeled Part 2, which was produced through CUNY Hunter College. Thank you all for being here. I am Lauren Weingarten with MeToo Many Voices, a community support network for survivors and supporters of survivors. Completely honored to be moderating this panel. Thank you all for letting me witness this powerful storytelling and for helping to lead a discussion. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I figured we'd go around real quick. Everyone can just introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Andy Sauer. I am the creative director and one of the producers of Unlabeled Part 2, and thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm Skylar. I am the other producer and the editor of the Unlabeled Part 2 video. Very excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Victor. I'm one of the performers as well as all-around actor, I guess. Hi.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carmelina, and I'm faculty with Women and Gender Studies at Hunter.
Hi. Oh, sorry. I'm Anais Escobar, and I was one of the storytellers today.
And I'm Sarah Jones, and I was also a storyteller today.
Excellent. Thank you all, and thank you all for joining us. We'll go ahead and get started. My first question will be specifically for Carmelina and then Andy, and we'll all kind of fill in, but I'm so curious, what is the history behind this project and the storytelling and turning it into the show?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. It was a really powerful performance and so well done. In so many ways, and at some point I found myself crying because it really touched my heart as well as my mind. So thank you so much. I am really, really grateful for this opportunity. And just very briefly, I got involved with the production of the Vagina Monologues in 2005 at Hunter College. And so we were doing the show for maybe about 5 or 6 years, strictly staying with the script that V-Day would send us, Eve Ensler's work. And then maybe around 2005 or 6, we decided to incorporate more stories from different work that Eve Ensler did, because we, kind of realized that we had done the same book 1 or 2, 2 years in a row, 3 years, whatever. So we started doing more integration of different stories, and then eventually around maybe 2010, we started integrating original stories from the students, and that took us to a different level. And I always wanted to, the intention anyway, to be part of this project was to involve as many students as possible, to make it as diverse as possible. And I have a creative project at Hunter that would be both kind of self-transformative, so using art for self-transformation, but also as a tool for social justice, because we were putting out stories about survival, about struggles, about victories, and transformation at the personal and at the social level. So this was for me, it was a holistic project, right? And very collective. We always focus on the collective collaboration and consensus. I didn't want to get involved in a project that was kind of top down, where I would control. I didn't want to control anything. I wanted to collaborate with students on a project. So we always followed this kind of format. And then it was a matter of, okay, so what do we do for content? And by 2010, we started to organize and integrate more personal stories. And as we went on, 2011, 2012, and so on, we put more and more stories. So by the time we get to almost, I think it was 2018 or something, or 19, the show was practically more individual, original stories from Hunter than Vagina Monologues or Eve Ensler's work. And we got into a little bit of trouble with the V-Day organization, but we got around that. So the time when I had the feminist theater class in the fall, and Andy was there, and there was oh gosh, I forgot the Mary Bell. Well, Andy will help out with the names, and you know, and other folks that were involved, and the energy was there to even go further. So yes, we did a vagina monologue. Yes, we integrated personal story. Let's do something totally different. So I see what we were doing, you know, since 2005 as kind of a journey, right? And a precedent to what came up. And I don't know. That's how I envision it, as kind of a journey that took us to Unlabeled. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. You sound like a great professor. I kind of want to come to New York and take one of your classes.
No, it's great students, I think. I think I've really had great students, and I've always had very proud of their work and their achievements and commitment. So,
Well, the show itself really speaks volumes to how much you've impacted the students and their lives. Including Andy, I'd love to pass it over to you. You know how, it sounds like you were in this class and were really moved by it, and fill us in.
Yeah, so I took feminist theater with Carmelina, and Annabelle May and Penny Dean were the names.
oh gosh, my memory.
No worries. Yeah, and that was it was fall of 2019, I think. Yeah, it was fall of 2019. And we read the vagina monologues, and like I'd always heard the vagina monologues, but for some reason in my mind it was like a murder what is that? I associated the vagina monologues with Murder, She Wrote in my head for some reason. I have no idea why. But I finally like actually read it for the first time, and it was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And Carmelina talked in class about these shows that she had put on and how it had kind of been on hiatus. And I looked at these two other women who, had become my friends in class, and we were like, yeah, like let's bring it back. And we decided to do Unlabeled, which was the first like totally original storytelling show that we put on in Hunter, I guess. At least, I don't know, maybe it wasn't, but yeah, so it started off there, and we were going to have a live performance the week that the shutdown happened in New York. It was that weekend that the live performance was supposed to happen. So we put it off to June and ended up doing a show on YouTube. And then this semester I was in another one of Carmelina's classes, and I was like, I want to do it again. So we started Unlabeled Part 2, and this is where we are now, and I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you took the class. I'm glad that you decided to keep moving it forward despite the pandemic. You found a way around it. And everyone else, anybody else want to share how they got involved with the project, how they heard about it? What made you want to take part in this show? Be so vulnerable and bare your truths to this project.
Well, as the other producer, Andy kind of just mentioned in our Women and Gender Studies class, I'm always down to work on a project, and this sounded really, really interesting. I messaged them immediately in the Zoom, and I was like, hey, let's make this happen. So we've been having meetings since was it late August, early September?
Yeah, early.
We've been in the works for a while. Yeah.
I can tell it's been a labor of love for you for quite some time. The show looks excellent, so it looked great.
I think for me, I was taking a class in, I think it was called Women in Media. And my professor had actually said, oh, she sent it an email to the entire class. You guys should try this out, see if it interests you at all, see if you can become a part of it. And that's kind of like where I got into it, because I felt like I have so many different stories to tell, especially with all the topics that we were talking about at hand during the actual workshops. And so that for me was like a perfect balance of coming, like for me, I was a sociology major. I graduated now, but I was also a media minor, sorry. And so it was like both those things coming and meeting, you know, somewhere in the center, and that's what attracted to me most.
For me, I heard about it. I took a women in gender studies class at Hunter, and towards the end of the semester, which was around December, Carmelina was, I guess, advertising, asking if anybody wanted to be part of Unlabeled. And at first I was like, maybe not. It seems like a huge commitment. But then I emailed, when I thought was last minute, but it wasn't. And I was like, you know what? I want to do it. I want to be part of a community where I can perform and just meet new people who also just kind of want to share a story all together. And I'm so glad I did. I love this, and I love all of you guys.
We love you too.
And for me, I guess sort of similar to Anais, but I know Skylar through the theater department. So I guess towards the end of the fall, they started advertising the workshops, and it felt like I didn't even realize that it was going to go from workshops into this. But I was like, oh, a workshop, like it was a really easy in to just sort of be in a room of people who are dealing with similar like things as you are with identity. And then from there, like we kept getting emails about like, hey, do you want to do this show? And I kept putting it off, and I wasn't gonna commit. And then at some point the deadline came up, and I was like, why not? And so here we are.
Here we are. Here we are indeed. Question for the storytellers. Feel comfortable sharing. You know, this story that you did share for the project is, one can say, maybe one story in a bigger chapter, in a bigger book of your life. Did you, when you signed on to do this, did you have a hunch? Were you like, oh, I know what story, I know what part of me I want to share? How did you decide that? Did you know right away? Did you kind of go back and forth?
I can answer this first. For me, it's something that like I've never like my body image is something I never usually like discuss. So I was like, what a perfect opportunity to kind of elaborate on past events that kind of shaped how I view myself. And like what a perfect audience to do it with, like people that I feel comfortable sharing this story with. And I just felt it was like ready for me to just like get it off my chest that I've been like dealing with this issue, and then like I'm working towards like getting better and loving myself more. It did take me a while to figure out what I wanted to write about, because I was like, oh, how personal do I get? Or, but then, yeah, this just kind of random. I was thinking about it in like a voice message, and I was like, okay, I'm settled. I'm going to write about this.
Thank you for that. Before the others answer, follow-up question, Anais. Is this something that you had shared with people close to you in your life already? Did people know about it? Did you find was it easier or more difficult to share with, you know, strangers or friends you just haven't met yet?
Honestly, it's not something I discuss with like friends at all. And I find opening up to strangers so easy, because there's like, they don't have an idea about me before I meet them. So I'm just like, okay, whatever, I'll just tell you. But so yeah, no, I haven't really discussed my history in like great detail like this with anybody close. And yeah, I just really, and I like, well, okay, I'm also an actor, and I find it easier to open up and be vulnerable in front of a crowd of strangers. And this is a perfect chance for me, instead of being in someone else's shoes, trying to relate a story into a character, for me to be the character and share my own story.
Thank you. That's really powerful. Sarah or Victor, do either of you want to chime in? Well, actually, Sarah, if you feel comfortable, would you mind going next about, did you know that this was the story you wanted to share?
Sure. So for me, I definitely knew that the part of my identity I wanted to talk about was like my queerness, because that was the workshop I had been to. It's also something that's been at the forefront of my consciousness throughout the last year, especially of the pandemic, and it's been something that has been on my mind. But the way that I ended up like approaching this specifically, like it sort of started with the letter that I shared. That was something that I already had from the fall. And the way that we sort of created these stories was a really nice workshop process where we sort of brought in a draft, and then we talked to Andy and Skylar, and they sort of helped us work through our stories. And so I started there, and I was like, I really didn't have a clear path to where to go from there. And then it sort of, for me, it was just assembling almost a timeline and picking out the moments that I've sort of been looking back at in my life and looking at them through a new lens. And then it sort of just happened from there, I guess.
Now that you have shared in this way, do you feel different at all? Any release?
That's a little bit, maybe. Yeah, I think so. I think that there's parts of this that I've talked about with like close friends and with people, but a lot of it is just stuff that I've journaled about, or that I have like voice memos of me talking about. And I think to just be able to share it, it sort of feels like it's less that has to be constantly grappled with, I guess. Like it's out in the world, and it's there for, yeah, I think there's a release of some sort definitely that comes along with it.
Maybe I'll have to do another, Unlabeled part 3 on how you've processed and come to terms with part 2. That will be a nice follow-up. Victor, I wanted to ask you, because in all of the stories that you are from, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that part of the kind of the pitch, the advertisement for this project was you can share your story as you are, or there could be actors available to share your story. And I think that the story you shared is powerful. And I just also want to say, before I do ask you a question, I wanted to say, thank you for sharing this person's story. I think that it's important to just remind all of us that it doesn't matter if you don't ever tell anybody, or if you, scream your story on, as put it in lights, that your story matters and that your voice matters. I think it's incredibly powerful that you did share this story. So thank you to the individual who shared their story to let you share it with us. And so within all these stories, you are the only actor representing somebody else's story. I honestly, even though I knew that, I kept forgetting it throughout your story. It did feel so real. How I can imagine your approach was a bit different than everybody else. How did it feel to embody these truths, somebody else's story? How did you prepare? Prepare.
Yeah, I thank you for asking. I have had a career as an actor for decades at this point. So for me, again, the acting part or the storytelling part was working with the person was not hard, because I showed up on day one and I was listening to everybody else tell their stories. I was sharing my stories about queerness, about so many other subjects that are taboo to talk about in some circles. So that, and I that was very hard for me because I didn't really want it. It's hard to share those, really intimate stories that you feel like people won't understand. But I mean, obviously we were in a very safe space and people were really super supportive. And then connecting with the person whose story I actually shared was easy then, you know, because we had so many similarities in our own lifetimes, you know, and that really helped us connect and put this story forward. But as an actor, I don't know, that to me is just second nature. And talking and speaking and sharing somebody else's story. I mean, that's kind of always been my gig, right? So I'm glad that I was able to, you know, present this and put something up that people could connect with, you know?
Mhm. Excellent. Thank you, Victor. As we keep chatting away, if anybody in the audience listening in does have any questions for anybody here on the panel, please feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll make sure that we address them. The stories that you all shared were so powerful and so personal and very much speak to, kind of as we discussed, like one of those stories, one of those chapters in your life. Is there anything else that you would want to share about yourself with all of us today, or watching your story unfold? Oh, I wish I had shared this as well, or oh, I ended up editing that part, but right now I'm kind of wishing that I did. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Want to start us off?
I can go if you like. For me, sorry, I was just speaking, but for me, because I didn't get to share my own story, like, and there was a lot of stuff that I kind of uncovered in this whole process as well. But I was also taking a violence in, I think in sociology class last semester as well. So I was like doing all this double work. Like we were talking about rape and violence. And this was also the first time that I had ever admitted to anybody in the world that I was raped. It's one of those things that people, like, especially men, do not like to talk about. And it is the reason why I showed up to Unlabeled, to the workshops, because I was like, all right, if I can share about this in my classroom atmosphere, and I, again, during the class, I had a lot of people like saying, oh my God, like, I can't believe this happened to you. And, you know, we care about you, we love you. And I got all this love and I'm like, why was I so scared to like share this? Like I'd never told a soul. And just speaking it out loud and being like, I actually went through this and survived, like, you know, it was very powerful.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Victor. And I want to say I believe you and I support you. And, you know, I often want to say you're so brave for sharing your story and for that, but, you know, you didn't ask for any of that. You know, you're braver than you should have had to be and tougher than you should have had to be. But I also know that right now there's someone, maybe, you know, a boy or a man hearing you say that, and it's going to make them feel, it's never easy to share those things, but even that much more comfortable in knowing that they're not alone. So thank you.
Can I say something? Oh, you know, it brought back memories of when we were all involved in doing the vagina monologue, because the process was so important to all of us, much more sometimes than the product that we put on stage. I mean, of course, you know, we wanted to do a great performance and, you know, be entertaining as well and perform well and so on. But the getting there was so crucial. And I remember a part of the team, we also had a mental health professional and a very spiritual person, Michelle Payne, who worked with all of us. And she was one of the directors. We have 5 or 6 directors, just like this project, right? It has a team, a group of people. And we would have these safe spaces where we'll bring the cast together and share stories, because a lot of the people who came to audition for the Vagina Monologues, or whatever the show was called that year, came because they went through some stuff. And they were reflecting on it, and they had experienced something that they wanted to put out there. And these were beautiful moments where we sat around, sometimes for 3 or 4 hours, and talked with each other, and share the stuff that we went through. And to listen to that, because I felt that was my job, to listen, was really an incredible transformation for me. It was a moment of a breakthrough, right? I learned so much from those students, and from the whole process. So I admire that. I really love to see how this process came along. So I just wanted to throw that in there, because thank you for bringing that to my memory.
Thank you for sharing that, Carmelina. I actually got chills while you were talking about it and thinking about where it started. And I feel like now more than ever, the idea of, storytelling or community as justice has really taken a forefront in storytelling, sharing our truths, and, being witness and holding space for people who are sharing. And I feel like I keep saying the word powerful, but it's powerful. And when one person shares their story or their truth, it really does open up that space for someone else too, and to feel comfortable doing so. We have a question from someone in the audience. What is the vision for this project to continue and evolve? What is your wish for how you to imagine this project to transform into? Andy, that might be a good one for you to start in on.
Yeah, I mean, my crazy dream for this project, maybe it's not that crazy. The way I envision this project continuing is I kind of just want to keep doing what we did for this project and have it keep growing. So like, as some people have mentioned, and I should have mentioned this when I was talking about the history of Unlabeled, but this year, unlike last year, we held a series of workshops. And I mentioned this in the beginning of the show too, but where I basically wrote a bunch of writing prompts for mine, and Skylar did for his, and then we had someone else, Hira Khan, who wrote a bunch of writing prompts for hers, and we just invited people to come. We gave them some writing prompts, we gave them some time to think and write and reflect, and then we gave them some time to share. And of course, this started out as a school project. It started out in a classroom, and it started out purely with Hunter College students, and now I am working with Lauren, who doesn't even live in the same state as me, who's someone from a community support network on Instagram. And and Anais connected us to YASIV, which is a national organization called Youth Against Sexual Violence. And it's like, I am making these connections with all these people. And it's like, why does this need to be a school project? I mean, I'm going to graduate next year, and I want to have workshops with people of all ages, of all educations and backgrounds, and just keep inviting them to come share their stories, and then keep inviting them to come perform their stories. Like, I could see this happening every 6 months. I don't know, I'm into it. I'm feeling the momentum going. So, and I also just want to say, if that's something that you're interested in being a part of, follow us on Instagram at Unlabeled Part 2, and I'll let you know what the plan is. And thank you for asking that, genuinely.
Of course. Skylar, would you like to speak to that as well, as a co-producer on the show?
I'm so sorry. I was just about to type in the chat that I do have to leave. I'm on Pacific Coast time right now. But yeah, it was a pleasure working with you guys. I cannot wait to see everyone again, get more involved in this production all over again. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Skylar.
Bye, y'all.
Skylar has to leave, but the panel discussion will continue. Thank you all for being here. It leads to the next audience question. These are great. Keep them coming. Thank you to everyone for the amazing show. for the producers. So maybe that's you now, Andy, or if Carmelina wants to chime in. What was difficult putting together this project in quarantine? Let's start there, and then we'll go to the second part of the question for the storytellers of, do you feel like it was easier to tell your stories in this format as opposed to being on stage? But back to you, Andy. Was it difficult putting this together in quarantine?
I mean, I definitely think that last year with the first part of Unlabeled, it was difficult. It was extremely difficult transitioning from imagining this fantabulous online on stage production where we were supposed to have music and drag and all these wonderful things, and then having to transition to quarantine and be like, how are we going to do this? But this year, I mean, I think it depends on the kind of person you are, right? Because a lot of people are way more comfortable speaking about themselves online, comfortable connecting online. Like for me personally, it's extremely difficult putting this together on quarantine because I don't even have any personal social media account at all. Like I don't have a network, so I didn't really know how to go about purely reaching out to people online. But then so I think for a certain kind of person, like, yeah, it would be easier if I were back in school, just tabling and chasing people down and striking up conversations and getting them to participate that way. But now as I'm thinking about transitioning into like the real world and doing this in the real world with real adults, I mean, how much different is this show really going to be when in post-pandemic kinds, if I'm inviting storytellers from California and Virginia and wherever else to come and perform, like I'm assuming most of us are not going to be able to afford plane tickets to go to a place and perform on stage. So I don't know, I think this was definitely a good learning experience for me, like kind of getting a sense of how to navigate the internet and how networking works in an online format. But yeah, it was definitely challenging for me.
Well, you've done a great job. And I think around this time last year, it was kind of started being a learning curve for all of us. We all virtually, I guess pun intended, had to go online, like literally virtually overnight. I was just laughing with a friend how it was just like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, that I did my first Zoom meeting. And I was like, wait, what Zoom? And now Zoom is just such a part of the fabric of our society. It's like, I feel like all meetings I have are now, it's just a Zoom call unless someone says otherwise. And it's like, that's how things are done. And I love your point, how it's able to bring more storytellers. It's able to expand these communities. As I run a virtual support network, and I get to work with people and talk to people all over the world that I would not get to do if it was all done in person. It's really interesting to think about. And I think as we hopefully get further away from the pandemic, continue to really see how much that has impacted the way we share, the way we communicate, arts, culture, all of that. Thank you. I will bring it back to the storytellers. Sarah, do you feel like going first? Is it easier to tell your stories in this format as opposed to being on stage?
For me, absolutely yes. I think I can't speak for the storytellers who are not on this call right now as panelists, but I used to be an actor and I am not an actor anymore. Absolutely not. So although I wouldn't be absolutely opposed to doing it on stage, I think it was far easier to have my laptop with my fully written out story in front of me with a camera in my room, and my environment was completely within my control, and I was able to sort of do it in a way that I had control over, which like made me a lot more comfortable. And I think sort of just being able to put it in this online format, it also as a whole it just felt very clean and professional, and not that it wouldn't have been like that on stage, but I think it gives you a sense of control over all of the elements, which I personally find a lot easier. So yeah, I think it was great. I also don't know that I would have been involved with it if it were to be happening in person, because there would be so many other things drawing my attention, and for it to be online, I was able to sort of devote this little chunk of my time to it that maybe I was saving from not having to commute to Hunter every day, you know.
Oh, that's valid. That makes a lot of sense. What about you, Anais?
I was gonna go next anyways. For me, I definitely, for a lot of similar reasons, I think it was easier because I got to stop recording and like check my my script again, and so I didn't have to rely on memory, and it was just very easy again to, yes, control the environment that I'm performing in. However, I still do act, and I do love live audience reactions. So that's something I miss. And hopefully in the future, if this is like a continuous project, I can get that again. The thing for me, I'm the only high school student here. So I don't know what it would have looked like if it were in person. I have school and our schedules are all different. I'm still a minor, so I'm not like as free to do certain things. So I'm really glad that this virtual aspect just made it easier for all of us to connect. So I'm very fortunate for it to have been virtual this year.
Thank you for sharing that. Victor, as an actor, and it seems like you work a lot as a professional actor. Are you noticing a big shift with the virtual, everything being virtual?
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, first of all, live theater, in-person theater is completely, halted at the moment. So I've had a lot of friends kind of obviously suffering because of that. Myself, my journey right now, I went back to school as an older student. So I was like in the mix of schools. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to have something to kind of take my mind off of the pandemic. And I'm so glad that I was able to not only have school to focus on and a completely different path from acting. I mean, sociology, business, and law are very different from being an actor. I mean, the first time I went to college, I was a dance major and a theater major, so it's very different. So for me, I didn't miss it as much. And I had, again, like I said, I was my senior year at Hunter, and I was overwhelmed with not only that, but also applications for grad school, the LSATs, auditioning, applying to law school. So I've had my hands full, luckily. But for me as an actor, I have to perform, like no matter what, right? So in all this craziness, of course, I found Unlabeled. A really good friend of mine from college, the first time I went to college, started producing these online readings through her own musical theater group on Facebook. So I was able to do and perform shows throughout the entire pandemic. I did like 6 or 7 shows in a course of a year. I would have never done 6 or 7 shows in a course of a year. And I got to play a bunch of different roles and have a great time and really still continue to act and perform and dance and sing and all that stuff while on Zoom. Yeah, exactly. I would do dance. I choreographed dance numbers and, perform them and sing. And I had a blast, but I would have never got to do all those shows if we were, if there was no pandemic. I mean, I would have been stuck at school. I wouldn't have been able to get out of classes to do these shows, you can't be in New York City and not be you can't just go and do a show on Broadway and then go to, it's not that easy. It's not like LA where we have a lot of regional theater, So I don't know. It was the silver lining is that I got to do a lot of stuff that I would have never done before.
I love that. Silver lining indeed. Looks like we have one more question from the audience. Thank you so much for posing these incredible questions. What was the most surprising outcome for you from this project? The workshop, writing your own monologue, and sharing your stories with each other. Andy, do you want to start with that one? Did you have and I just lost my place in the chat, but did you, what was your most surprising outcome?
My most surprising outcome, honestly, was that people came to these workshops and then actually spoke. Because I'm thinking, like, I don't, as interested as I am in storytelling as activism, and as interested as I am in starting to maybe think about performing my own stories, despite the fact that I'm not even a little bit of an actor or a performer, I don't know that I would have signed up for something like this if I had gotten the email, you know? So I was just so elated after that first workshop, and like 6 strangers came and just talked, and I was in the room and they didn't care that I was like in the Zoom room, and they were just talking about their personal experiences, and that was so incredibly surprising in such an amazing way. And it just gave me the energy I needed to like keep working on this for another 3 months and like make it happen.
Um, Thank you for that, Andy. Does anybody else want to speak about their most surprising outcome from the project, start to finish?
I'd love to. Okay, so for me, I haven't had much experience writing, and I think I had so much doubt going into this that I could produce like an even okay writing project. So coming out of it and like hearing like great things coming from other people, from people that have edited my story, I'm like, I guess I kind of got this newfound confidence in myself and like a new skill I acquired during this. And yeah, I really love it. I'm so grateful for it.
I can see it in your face. I can see that smile in your face. While you are chatting and up to the mic, and then we'll kind of backtrack, but a question for all, and for you in particular, do you see the issues you talked about also impacting your peers at school?
Okay, I think my school is a very, very rare environment. I go to performing arts high school, and oddly enough, there are very select few that I have ever seen that have body image issues. We're like the nicest group of people. But with that said, I'm sure there's a lot of like hidden anxiety in people because we all have this very confident appearance. So maybe I hope it could inspire other people to see like me, who like to portray this super confident, that I love myself, but I've never really shared that there's parts of me that I didn't love. So I hope that like, oh my gosh, I'm tearing up. I hope that can influence other people to share, sorry, to share as well if they have like hidden insecurities. Sorry, I didn't mean to cry, but I think that's all I have to say.
It's okay to cry. Crying is a release in itself, and just like sharing our stories. I wish I could. One thing virtually we have not figured out yet is how to like pass tissues through the Zoom call. Thank you for that. Sarah, what about you? What was the most surprising outcome from you for this project? And if you also want to speak to the issues impacting your peers as well.
Sure. I don't know if this is necessarily the most surprising outcome, but thinking about sort of what has come out of this, so I'm not an actor, but I am like a theater person, administrator, manager, theater maker, and the past few months, I guess I've been toying around a lot with like a sort of interview based, like devising an interview based theater piece, and I think that seeing the success of something like this, of people being so willing to share their stories and have it be in like performance art, is sort of a confirmation that the projects that I'm hoping to pursue are definitely within reach and definitely possible, even as someone who's still a student. So I think that that's been really exciting to see the success of this and just know how much is possible out of these kinds of things. And then as far as seeing the issues in like at school, I definitely think that I guess I talked less about, it was less of like a concrete issue than other people. Mine is more of an exploration, I guess, but I definitely think that it's something that within my community of friends, and even within like the communities that I've seen like on social media, on things like TikTok, for example, like I think that people, especially in the past year, have been grappling with their identities, having been cooped up by themselves and sort of unable to connect with other people in a physical space, and being so, I think a lot of people have been dealing with isolation, and I definitely think that a lot of grappling with identity has happened in a similar way to what I've experienced.
Absolutely, well said. And I agree. This has been really kind of a, unprecedented time where we are. It's a lonely time. And it's a confusing time. And I think one that we'll continue to grapple with, maybe that's Unlabeled part 3 or part 4, the pandemic version, but absolutely. I'm sure that many resonate with that as well. I thank you all for the questions. We will now pivot over to the workshop portion. Thank you all for being a part of the panel. As part of the workshop, we will stop the recording so everyone can feel more comfortable to turn on your camera.